You are such a good boy. Yes, you are. Who's a good boy? There you go, sweetie. Hey, buddy. I see you. Yes, I do. Are you being a good boy out there?
Morning arrived gently. Not with alarms. Not with urgency. But with light. Soft sunlight slid across the quiet street, touching the edges of parked cars, warming the faded paint on the wooden porch. The air carried the faint smell of dew and clean wood. Somewhere down the block, a bird called once, then fell silent again. Emma stood just inside her front door, one hand wrapped around a ceramic mug. Steam rose slowly. She wasn't thinking about anything important. Just the day ahead. A grocery run. Laundry. Maybe a phone call she'd been putting off. Nothing extraordinary. She turned the handle and stepped outside. The porch creaked softly under her weight. That was when she noticed him. He was small. Much smaller than she expected her eyes to register at first, curled tightly near the corner of the porch, tucked close to the railing where shadow met light. A stray puppy. Brown and cream fur, uneven and dusty. One ear flopped forward, the other folded back like it hadn't decided what it wanted to be yet. He wasn't sleeping. He was watching her. Not startled. Not nervous. Just waiting. Emma froze. Her breath caught in that quiet way people don't notice until later. She didn't move. The mug hovered near her chest, forgotten. The puppy didn't move either. No wagging tail. No whimper. No attempt to run. His eyes followed her, dark, steady, focused. There was something calm in them. Something intentional. Like he had chosen this place. Like he had chosen her. Emma slowly lowered the mug onto the small table beside the door. "Hey," she said quietly. Her voice sounded too loud in the stillness. The puppy's ears twitched at the sound, but his body stayed exactly where it was. Paws tucked neatly beneath him. Spine straight. Head lifted just enough to keep her in view. He didn't look lost. He looked certain. Emma took one cautious step forward. The boards creaked again. Still, the puppy didn't retreat. That was the first thing that unsettled her, in a gentle way. Most strays flinched. Most pulled back or bolted. This one stayed rooted, as if the porch itself had grown around him. She crouched slowly, keeping her movements small. "You okay, little guy?" she whispered. The puppy blinked once. Then, carefully, he placed one paw forward. Not toward her. Toward the door. Emma's heart gave a small, unexpected ache. She glanced at the door, then back at him. "You live here?" she murmured, almost smiling at herself. The puppy didn't smile back. He didn't wag. But he leaned forward just slightly, nose lifting as if breathing in the familiar scent of the house behind her. Wood polish. Old books. Coffee. A life lived quietly inside. Emma felt something shift. A memory, maybe. Or a question she didn't yet know how to ask. She extended her hand slowly, palm down. The puppy didn't sniff right away. Instead, he watched her fingers. As if recognizing them. Then, gently, he leaned forward and touched his nose to her skin. Warm. Soft. Real. Emma swallowed. "Hi," she said again, softer this time. The puppy exhaled through his nose, a tiny huff of breath, and settled back onto his paws, still close to the door. Still not leaving. Still choosing the porch. Emma sat down fully now, cross-legged on the wood, ignoring the chill seeping through her jeans. She didn't reach for him again. She didn't want to break whatever fragile balance had formed between them. They sat like that for a moment. Two beings sharing a quiet morning. Then the puppy did something that made her chest tighten. He looked past her. Not at the street. Not at the sky. At the door behind her. And he whined. Just once. Low. Soft. Emma turned slowly, following his gaze. The door stood the same as always. Peeling paint near the hinge. The faint scratch mark near the bottom, left there years ago by a dog she no longer spoke about. A dog whose collar still sat in a drawer she never opened. She felt her throat close. No, she whispered, more to herself than to him. The puppy shifted closer. His shoulder brushed her knee. He didn't climb into her lap. Didn't ask for comfort. He offered presence. Emma closed her eyes. Something was happening here. Something she didn't understand yet. The puppy wasn't begging. He wasn't searching. He was waiting. Waiting for her to notice. Waiting for her to remember. When she opened her eyes again, her vision blurred slightly. She laughed under her breath, a small, shaky sound. I don't know why you're here, she said quietly. But you seem pretty sure. The puppy's tail tapped the porch once. Just once. Emma reached out then, unable to stop herself, and rested her hand gently against his side. He was warm. Steady. Breathing slow, like he belonged there. And for the first time in a long while, the porch didn't feel empty anymore. Emma had no idea that this quiet moment, this stillness, this choice the puppy had made, was the beginning of something that would gently undo her, and then put her back together again. Because the puppy hadn't come here by accident. And the reason he refused to leave was more beautiful than she could imagine. The morning continued. Slowly. Carefully. As if the day itself didn't want to rush whatever was happening on that porch. Emma shifted her weight, stretching her legs slightly, but she didn't stand. She wasn't ready to break the moment. The puppy noticed every small movement. His eyes followed her knee as it adjusted. His ears tilted, reading her the way dogs do, without judgment, without assumption. Just attention. You're really not leaving, are you? She said softly. The words were meant to be light. A half-joke. But the puppy didn't respond the way she expected. He didn't lift his head. Didn't tilt it curiously. Didn't wag his tail again. Instead, he lowered his body closer to the porch boards, and pressed himself more firmly against the space beside the door. As if bracing. As if staying required effort. Emma felt a quiet tension settle in her chest. Most animals wandered. Most strays drifted. This one was anchoring himself. She glanced toward the street. It was empty now. No passing cars. No neighbors stepping out. Just a hum of distance and the slow warmth of the sun rising higher. You come from somewhere? She asked. The puppy blinked. Once. Then his gaze drifted back to the door. Always the door. Emma followed his eyes again, searching for something she might have missed. The handle. The frame. The narrow strip of shadow beneath it. Nothing had changed. And yet, something felt different. She stood slowly this time, careful not to startle him. The puppy didn't flinch. He didn't scramble away. He stayed exactly where he was. Emma stepped down from the porch and onto the walkway. Gravel crunched under her shoes. She turned back to face him from a few feet away. Okay, she said gently. Let's see what happens. She waited. The puppy watched her, but he didn't follow. Not even a step. That was the moment she knew. He wasn't attached to her. He was attached to the house. Emma took another step backward. Still nothing. The puppy's body remained angled toward the door, his shoulder almost touching it now, as if the wood itself offered reassurance. Her heart began to beat a little faster. She had seen dogs refuse to move before. Fear could do that. Trauma could do that. But this wasn't fear. His breathing was steady. His posture calm. His eyes clear. This was intention. Emma stepped forward again, returning to the porch. The puppy relaxed, just slightly. Like she had passed a test. She crouched beside him, lowering herself so their eyes were level. "You're guarding something," she whispered. The puppy didn't react. But his chest rose with a deeper breath. Emma reached out and gently brushed her fingers along his back. He didn't stiffen. His muscles didn't tense. He accepted the touch like it belonged there. Like it had happened before. That thought sent a quiet chill through her. She pulled her hand back slowly. Her mind began to search for explanations. Maybe he belonged to a neighbor. Maybe he had followed someone here. Maybe. Her thoughts stalled. Because none of those explanations explained why he chose this porch. This exact spot. This exact door. She sat beside him again. Minutes passed. The sun climbed higher. The chill faded from the wood beneath her palms. The mug of tea she had left by the door cooled untouched. The puppy shifted once, repositioning his paws, but never moving away from the door. Not even an inch. Emma sighed softly. "All right," she said. "I have things to do today." The puppy looked up at her. Directly at her this time. His eyes weren't pleading. They were steady. Certain. Emma stood. The puppy stayed. She opened the door slowly, just enough to peek inside. The familiar scent of her home drifted out. Warm air. Old paper. Lavender soap. The puppy inhaled deeply. Then, very carefully, he sat up straighter. Emma paused. "Do you want to come in?" she asked, unsure why she was asking at all. The puppy didn't rush forward. He didn't cross the threshold. Instead, he leaned forward and placed one paw against the bottom of the doorframe. Just the paw. As if testing something unseen. Emma's breath caught. "That's okay," she said quickly. "You don't have to." She opened the door wider and stepped back. The puppy stayed outside. Still pressed close. Still watching. Emma felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. She closed the door gently and leaned her back against it. The puppy exhaled. Long. Slow. As if that had been the right choice. Emma slid down until she was sitting on the porch again, her shoulder touching the door, mirroring his position on the other side of her body. They sat like that. Two forms leaning against the same barrier. Separated, but connected. Emma stared out at the quiet street, her thoughts drifting somewhere between memory and feeling. She couldn't place it yet, but something old was stirring. Something she had packed away carefully, believing it was settled. The puppy shifted closer. His side pressed fully against her leg now. The contact was warm. Grounding. She didn't move away. "I lost a dog once," she said quietly, surprised by her own honesty. "A long time ago." The puppy's ears flicked. She swallowed. "I told myself I was done," she continued. "That I couldn't do it again." Her voice softened. "But you're not even asking for anything, are you?" The puppy rested his chin on his paws. Still facing the door. Still choosing it. Emma reached out and rested her hand lightly on his head. This time, he leaned into it. Just enough. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. She laughed quietly, wiping at her cheek. "You're stubborn," she whispered. The puppy's tail tapped the porch once. Again. Emma leaned her head back against the door and closed her eyes. For the first time that morning, she stopped trying to understand. She simply stayed. And the puppy, the quiet little guardian, stayed too. Because whatever had brought him here, Whatever he was waiting for. It wasn't finished yet. Late morning light settled in. Not bright. Not harsh. Just warm enough to soften the edges of everything. Emma sat on the porch longer than she meant to. The world didn't demand her attention. No phone buzzing. No neighbor passing by. Even the street seemed to respect the stillness, holding its breath. The puppy remained beside her. Unmoving. But not unaware. He watched everything. Not in the restless way puppies usually did, chasing sounds, flicking their heads at every passing shadow. His attention was deliberate. Focused. Like he was listening to something deeper than noise. Emma noticed it when a breeze stirred the leaves across the yard. The puppy's ears lifted. Not toward the sound. Toward her. She glanced down. "You heard that too?" she murmured. The puppy's eyes met hers. And for a brief, strange moment, it felt like he was checking on her. Emma shifted slightly, unsettled in the gentlest way. She'd grown up with dogs. She knew their habits. Their instincts. Their expressions. This was different. This was awareness. She stood slowly and stretched her arms above her head. Her back cracked softly. The puppy tracked her movement from start to finish, his head turning just enough to keep her in view. When she stepped toward the edge of the porch, he rose instantly. Not in alarm. In response. Emma stopped. The puppy stopped. They mirrored each other. Her pulse picked up. "Okay," she said under her breath. "That's new." She stepped down onto the walkway again. The puppy stayed put. But his body angled toward her now, not the door. That was new too. She took another step away. The puppy didn't follow. But his eyes did. Fully. Attentively. As if distance mattered less than connection. Emma felt a quiet warmth bloom behind her ribs. She returned to the porch, crouching near him once more. "You're watching me," she said. The puppy blinked. Slowly. Then he looked back at the door. Like he'd said what needed to be said. Emma exhaled through her nose, half smiling. She went inside briefly to refill her mug, leaving the door cracked open. The sound of the kettle echoed softly through the house. For a split second, a thought flickered. What if he leaves? She peeked through the doorway. He hadn't moved. Not even a shift of weight. Relief washed over her, surprising in its intensity. She stepped back outside. The puppy's tail gave a faint, almost imperceptible sway. Emma sat again. Minutes passed. Then something changed. The puppy lifted his head sharply, eyes fixed, ears alert. Emma followed his gaze. Nothing. No movement. No sound. But the puppy leaned forward, nose twitching slightly. He wasn't tense. He wasn't anxious. He was attentive. Listening. Waiting. Emma's skin prickled. "What is it?" she whispered. The puppy didn't look at her. Instead, he stood and moved closer to the door, pressing his shoulder against it the way he had earlier. More firmly this time. Emma's breath slowed. Her mind drifted, unbidden, to memory. A different porch. Years ago. A bigger dog. Older. Calmer. Sitting by her side every morning while she drank her coffee. The way he used to lean against her leg when something inside the house caught his attention. She swallowed hard. "That's," her voice faltered. "You do that too." The puppy stayed pressed against the door. Emma stood and rested her hand against the wood beside him. She felt it then. Not sound. Not movement. Just familiarity. Like the house itself remembered something. Emma stepped back, heart beating louder now, not from fear, but recognition. "You're not here for me," she said quietly. The puppy didn't move. You're here for this, she added, touching the door again. The puppy's tail tapped once. Emma's eyes burned. She knelt, her forehead nearly touching the doorframe, the puppy's warmth steady beside her. Whatever you're waiting for, she whispered. I think I'm supposed to help. The puppy finally turned his head toward her. And for the first time since she'd seen him, he rested his head against her knee. Not asking. Thanking. Emma closed her eyes. Her hand trembled as she stroked his fur. Something old was rising now. Something she hadn't let herself feel in years. And deep down, she knew. This wasn't coincidence. This was connection. And the reason behind it was getting closer. Afternoon settled in quietly. The sun drifted higher, softening the shadows along the porch. Light spilled through the railing, painting thin lines across the floorboards. Dust floated lazily in the air, slow enough to watch. Emma hadn't realized how much time had passed. Her phone buzzed once from inside the house. She ignored it. The puppy shifted beside her, adjusting his position so his body stayed close, never touching too much, never pulling away. The space between them felt intentional. Measured. Respectful. Emma leaned back against the door again, knees bent, arms wrapped loosely around herself. The wood was warm now. Familiar. Steady. You're very polite, she said quietly. The puppy's ears twitched. She smiled. It had been a long time since she'd shared silence with anyone without feeling the need to fill it. With him, the quiet felt complete. Like nothing was missing. A car passed at the end of the street. The puppy watched it go. Then his attention returned to her. Emma noticed the pattern. Whenever something changed, sound, light, movement, he checked the world, and then he checked her. As if she was part of the environment he was guarding. As if her presence mattered to whatever he was doing here. That realization settled gently in her chest. You're making sure I'm okay, she murmured. The puppy didn't react. But his breathing slowed. Emma reached into her pocket and pulled out a small biscuit she'd forgotten was there. She broke it in half, careful not to make sudden movements. Here, she said, placing it on the porch between them. The puppy glanced at it. Then back at the door. He didn't eat it. Emma didn't push. She slid the biscuit a little closer to him and rested her hand on the floorboards again. The puppy shifted, finally lowering his head and taking the treat slowly, deliberately. No urgency. No hunger-driven panic. He chewed carefully, then licked his nose and settled back into place. Emma's throat tightened. You trust me, she whispered. The puppy leaned against her leg, just slightly. Enough to answer. She closed her eyes for a moment. A memory surfaced without warning. Her old dog, lying in this same spot years ago. The way he used to press against the door when storms rolled in. The way he'd sit silently, as if listening for something only he could hear. Emma opened her eyes, heart beating softly now. I used to think I imagined things, she said. The way he knew, before I did. The puppy lifted his head. He was listening. She laughed quietly, wiping beneath her eye. I'm talking to you like you understand, she said. The puppy rested his chin on her knee. Emma's breath caught. She placed her hand gently on his head, fingers threading through the uneven fur. He didn't flinch. Didn't shift away. He stayed. The contact felt grounding, like a quiet promise neither of them had spoken aloud. Time stretched. The sun moved. The porch grew quieter still. Then, very softly, the puppy shifted again. He stood. Moved closer to the door. Pressed his shoulder against it. Harder than before. Emma straightened. Her hand hovered in the air, unsure. What is it? She asked, voice barely above a breath. The puppy didn't look at her. He stayed focused, steady, connected to something unseen. Emma placed her palm against the door beside him. She felt it then. Not sound. Not movement. A presence. Not threatening. Not frightening. Familiar. Her heart pounded gently. "Okay," she whispered. "I'm here." The puppy relaxed, just a little. Emma stayed with him, hand on the door, shoulder close to his. Whatever this was. Whatever was unfolding between them. It wasn't about urgency. It was about patience. About listening. About honoring something that needed time. And Emma understood now. The bond forming here wasn't sudden. It was layered. Built quietly. Moment by moment. In the space between them. The light began to change. Afternoon slipped gently toward evening, stretching shadows across the porch until they softened and blurred. The air cooled just enough to raise a quiet awareness of time passing. Emma noticed it in her bones before she noticed it in the sky. The puppy noticed it too. He lifted his head and inhaled slowly, deeply, like he was reading the hour by scent alone. Then he looked at Emma. Not to ask. To confirm. She shifted closer to him without thinking, their shoulders nearly touching now. The door pressed cool against her back. The house felt awake in a way she hadn't sensed in years. "I think it's getting late," she said softly. The puppy didn't move. He had heard her. But he was listening to something else. Emma followed his gaze again, down toward the base of the door. The narrow space where light barely reached. The place most people never looked. She leaned forward. And that's when she saw it. A faint scratch mark. Old. Nearly worn away. Her breath caught. She reached down and traced it with her fingertip. The groove was shallow now, softened by time and paint. But she knew it instantly. Her chest tightened. "No," she whispered. The puppy pressed closer. Emma's mind slipped backward. A different year. A different version of herself. A dog, bigger, older, scratching gently at the door when he sensed something wrong inside. When her father's health had started to fail. When nights had grown quiet and heavy. He used to sit right here. Right where this puppy was sitting now. Emma pulled her hand back, fingers trembling. "I forgot," she said softly. "I forgot how much he loved this spot." The puppy shifted and rested his chin on the doorframe, exactly where her old dog used to. Her vision blurred. She hadn't spoken his name out loud in a long time. She hadn't needed to. She'd tucked those memories away, thinking distance would dull them. But the house hadn't forgotten. And apparently, neither had the porch. Emma leaned forward, resting her forehead briefly against the door. "I didn't know you could feel that," she whispered. "After everything." The puppy let out a soft breath. Not a whine. Not a bark. Just air. As if agreeing. Emma stayed like that for a long moment, letting memory settle instead of fighting it. The ache in her chest didn't hurt the way it used to. It felt open. Honest. She sat back and looked at the puppy. "You came here because of him," she said slowly. "Didn't you?" The puppy didn't look away. His eyes were calm. Steady. Certain. Emma's heart began to understand before her mind did. This puppy hadn't followed her. He hadn't wandered randomly. He had found something familiar. Something that had once been safe. She reached out and cupped his face gently between her hands. His fur was warm beneath her palms. Real. Present. "You don't even know him," she whispered. "But you know this place." The puppy leaned into her touch. She laughed softly through the tears. "Or maybe," she added, voice breaking just a little, "you know me." The sky darkened another shade. Evening settled in fully now. Emma stayed seated, one hand resting on the puppy's back, the other still near the door. She felt something easing inside her, something she hadn't realized she'd been carrying so tightly. The puppy shifted, then slowly turned and looked up at her again. This time, he wagged his tail. Not once. Not twice. A gentle, steady rhythm. Emma smiled. For the first time that day, she smiled without hesitation. "Okay," she said quietly. "I think I'm ready." The puppy stood. And for the first time, he turned away from the door. Just slightly. Dusk arrived slowly. Not all at once, but in layers. The sky softened into pale blue and amber, the kind of light that made everything feel unfinished, waiting for night to decide what it would become. Porch lights flickered on up and down the street, one by one, like quiet acknowledgments. Emma noticed the puppy's shift before she understood it. He stood taller now. Not tense. Not restless. Aware. He looked from the door, to her, and then back again. His body formed a gentle line between them, as if connecting two worlds that had been kept apart for too long. Emma rose slowly, brushing off her jeans. Her movements felt careful. Reverent. Like she was approaching something fragile. "You're ready to go," she said softly. The puppy didn't leave. But he took one step away from the door. Just one. Emma's breath caught. That single step felt heavier than all the hours they'd spent sitting there. It wasn't hesitation she saw in him. It was completion. She opened the door fully this time. The house greeted them with warmth. Lamps glowed softly inside. Shadows rested in familiar places. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. The puppy stood at the threshold, head lowered slightly, ears relaxed. He didn't rush in. He didn't freeze either. He waited. Emma knelt beside him. "You don't have to," she whispered. The puppy looked up at her. And in his eyes, she saw it, not sadness, not fear. Peace. He stepped forward. Not into the house. But past her. Down the porch steps. Emma turned quickly. "Hey!" The puppy stopped at the bottom step and looked back. He sat. Waiting. Emma stared at him, heart pounding softly now, not with anxiety, but realization. "Oh," she breathed. The truth landed gently. He hadn't been asking for shelter. He hadn't been guarding the house. He had been helping her say goodbye. Emma stepped onto the porch, the door still open behind her. She looked back once at the hallway, the quiet rooms, the memories that no longer felt sharp. Then she looked at the puppy again. "You stayed until I was ready," she said. The puppy's tail wagged slowly. Emma descended the steps and knelt in front of him, resting her forehead briefly against his. "Thank you," she whispered. She didn't know who she was thanking anymore. The puppy stood, turned and began to walk down the sidewalk. Emma hesitated. Then followed. They moved together, side by side, the evening wrapping around them like a soft exhale. The puppy didn't pull ahead. He didn't look back. He trusted she would walk with him. They reached the corner of the street. The puppy stopped. Saturday. Looked up at her one last time. Emma felt tears rise, but they weren't heavy. They were light. "Be safe," she said quietly. The puppy leaned forward and pressed his nose to her hand. Then he turned and walked away. Emma stood there long after he disappeared from view, the night settling fully now. She felt empty and full all at once. When she finally returned to the porch, the house felt different. Lighter. She closed the door gently behind her. And for the first time in years, she slept without regret. Morning returned quietly. Not as a repeat, but as a response. Light slipped through the curtains in softer tones than before, touching the walls as if testing whether it was welcome. Emma woke without the usual heaviness in her chest. No sharp memories. No sudden ache. Just stillness. She lay there for a moment, listening to the house breathe. The hallway clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. The floor settled with a soft creak. Normal sounds. Comforting sounds. Emma sat up and swung her legs over the side of the bed. As her feet touched the floor, a strange awareness moved through her, like she was stepping into a day that had already been prepared for her. She made coffee. Stood at the counter. Waited for something. She smiled faintly when she realized what it was. Habit. She carried her mug outside and stepped onto the porch. The space was empty. No small body curled by the railing. No steady eyes watching the door. Just sunlight. Emma didn't feel the loss the way she expected to. Instead, she felt presence. She sat on the porch step and breathed in the cool morning air. The wood beneath her palms felt familiar again, not haunted. Not heavy. Remembered. Her gaze drifted to the doorframe. To the faint scratch mark. She reached out and touched it gently. "I understand now," she said aloud. The words didn't echo. They settled. The truth unfolded slowly, not as a revelation, but as recognition. The puppy hadn't been there to replace anything. He hadn't come to stay. He had come to remind. To show her that love didn't vanish just because time moved forward. That the bond she'd shared years ago hadn't ended in loss, it had transformed. She closed her eyes. In her mind, she saw it clearly now. That old dog. Sitting patiently. Keeping watch. Waiting for her to be ready. And when she finally was, the world had sent someone smaller. Lighter. Temporary. Just long enough. Emma exhaled. A soft laugh escaped her. "I was so afraid of opening the door again," she whispered. "I didn't realize it wasn't asking me to hold on." She stood and opened the door. The house felt warm. Welcoming. She let the morning in. Later that day, as she walked through the neighborhood, she noticed things she'd missed before. A bowl of water set out by a fence. A hand-painted sign offering free dog treats. A child's chalk drawing of paw prints on the sidewalk. The world had been full of quiet kindness all along. That evening, she stopped by a local shelter. She didn't rush. She didn't ask for anything specific. She simply walked. Watched. Listened. When a volunteer asked if she was looking to adopt, Emma smiled and shook her head. "Not yet," she said gently. "But I will." The volunteer nodded like she understood. That night, Emma returned home and sat on the porch once more. She placed a small bowl of water near the door. Not because she expected anyone, but because the porch remembered. And so did she. The truth wasn't something that left with the puppy. It stayed. It settled into her life quietly. Love doesn't end. It waits. And when the moment is right, it comes back. Just long enough to show you the way forward. The seasons shifted quietly. Not all at once, but in small, honest ways. Leaves gathered along the edges of the porch. The air cooled. Mornings grew slower. Emma noticed how easily she adapted to it all now. How the house no longer felt like something she was managing, but something she was living inside. The porch became part of her routine again. Coffee in the morning. A pause in the afternoon. A place to breathe. The scratch mark on the door remained. She never painted over it. Some things weren't meant to be erased. One evening, as the sky faded into soft lavender and gold, Emma sat on the steps and watched the neighborhood settle in for the night. Children's voices drifted from a nearby yard. A dog barked once in the distance. She smiled. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A photo message from a shelter volunteer she'd met weeks earlier. A puppy came in today. Calm. Quiet. Wouldn't leave the front door. Emma closed her eyes. She didn't rush. She didn't panic. She simply breathed. The next morning, she returned to the shelter. Not with expectation. With openness. The puppy she met there wasn't the same. Different fur, different eyes, different energy. And that was exactly right. She knelt. The puppy approached carefully. Curious, but not demanding. They sat together for a while. Just like before. Emma felt no pressure to decide anything immediately. No urgency. No fear of loss. Only presence. Only choice. When she finally stood to leave, the puppy followed her to the door, then stopped. Looked up. Emma smiled and crouched beside him. "I'll be back," she said softly. The puppy wagged his tail. That night, Emma returned home and sat on her porch one last time before going inside. The air was cool. Clean. Peaceful. She placed her palm against the door. Not to listen. Not to wait. Just to feel. The porch no longer felt like a place of endings. It felt like a beginning that had learned patience. Emma stood, opened the door, and stepped inside, leaving the porch light on behind her. Not as a signal. As a kindness. Because sometimes, the ones who come into our lives aren't meant to stay. They come to guide us. To soften us. To remind us who we are. And who we're ready to become. And when they leave, they don't take the love with them. They leave it behind. Right where it's needed most. On a quiet porch. Waiting.